What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Irish Football Pod. Connor, what's going on, dude?
Doing good, man. Just trying to think of topics of what to talk about, and I think we got a good one today.
I'd say we got a really good one today. We want to talk about conferences, conference realignment, and how Notre Dame kind of fits in all this whole thing. I think from the onset of a few years ago when all this stuff broke down, the Pac-10 dissolved. You had all these teams from the West Coast basically just trying to find a home, right? To
hmm
host their collegiate athletics. You had Stanford go to the ACC, Cal go to the ACC. Uh, you know, Big Ten teams like USC,
Yeah,
UCLA. It's just a totally different landscape these days. And dude, it doesn't feel like the old college football anymore at all.
Mm. no, no, it's wild, wild west now with the transfer portal and just everything is new. It's a new era of college football, and I had just had pretty much I had the thought of the topic of the day, and for Notre Dame, we were always asked, why don't we join a conference? But I think the question now is, why don't those teams become independent? And I just think that's a really cool topic of conversation in this new era of college football.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think about instantly when either a fan of another program or, you know, James Franklin up at the podium with Freeman says every
Yeah.
team should play in a conference. I do respect the fact that a lot of these teams have been in conferences for a really long time and they have conference pride. Like I can understand that. I don't downplay anybody who has conference pride. It is what it is.
hmm
But to say that it's wrong for Notre Dame to be doing what they're doing, and there's been a few other independents over the course of, college football and, NCAA athletics. But if you're saying that there's something wrong with Notre Dame being independent, I just don't see how you can make that argument anymore. Like, if it's so bad, right, that we're not in a conference, the thing I always say is, well, you guys go be independent yourselves. And then
Yeah,
once you say that, there's really nothing that they even they have nothing to say.
because they know that they can't sustain it like Notre Dame does and has for the beginning of time. We've done it since day one, and I don't see it stopping anytime soon. Personally, there for a while, the last it tamed down a little bit this past year, but a couple years ago they were really talking about they're going to be forced to join. They're going to have to at some point, and I just think that argument has became less and less talked about recently because we just proved being independent we can still get to the national title. We can still acquire the players it takes to get to the title. Um, you look at other teams, they go through 20, 30 transfer portal players. Well, Freeman has kind of capped his amount of players that he wants to go after, and he just goes after kids he knows that are going to make a difference. Hence, the kids we see or have seen make plays, in the late season. So it's just a whole nother era. It's to what you said. These teams can't sustain it because they don't have the TV deal like Notre Dame. They don't travel as much as Notre Dame. They don't have the bigger as big of a brand like Notre Dame, so they don't. They just can't sustain it. And
Yeah.
there was talks of the money that we made for the stretch that we had in the playoffs. We got all the money where those other teams had to split it up into their conference. And that's the main talking point with Notre Dame joining a conference is money. We're good on money. Like we're making more money than other teams, but they don't
And
just not talked
that
about.
that's exactly what it comes down to for me. It's fine if you want us to be in a conference, but we're able to sustain it and not only sustain, but literally like elevate our program, not only on the field, but financially as well. We just signed another NBC deal. If there's a team or if you want to be independent, by all means, go for it and try it. But a lot of these
You can try.
schools, they're not just going to be able to, walk into a network and start negotiating for a TV deal. That's just not how it works. Notre Dame has that brand power, coast to
Yeah,
coast. We draw the eyeballs no matter what. That's just how it is, and that's just how it's always going to be. Other teams, of course, they've got their followings, but do they have the followings to warrant a individual TV deal like we have? My
right.
answer for almost 9.9 out of 10 teams is no. I'm sure there could be a couple that could make it work. Alabama, Ohio State, like I'm sure if something were to happen with those teams like that or that caliber of team, blue blood, like they might be able to make it work. But I'm with you, dude. Like I think that talk is now over. We just made a championship run as an independent again. Uh, like all the conference champions lost in the first round. I mean, there is no benefit to being in there unless you have to be in there
Yeah.
for financial reasons. Other than
Mhm.
that, I'm totally fine as long as we can keep our schedule and everything coherent and on track. That's what it comes down to. Now, a couple years ago, I was on the fence of like, well, we might have to join. Like, depending on how this playoff format shakes out, I thought maybe we might have to join, but I don't see that being on the table.
Yeah, I personally, when we saw the things changing in front of our eyes, I still had that gut feeling in me that we were going to remain independent. Just something deep down in me told me that we're not going to let this go that easy, just because there were talks that the college football committee even wouldn't want us in. It's like I don't know where those narratives ever came from, because in what world would they let that happen? One of the biggest brands in college football, they're never gonna not allow Notre Dame to be in it. Um, just like the non-Power Five conferences and the Power Four, those teams get a chance. They're lower
Right.
level teams. They're not, in Notre Dame's, still a top 10 team every year. So
Hmm.
the
Yep.
brand, I think, is too strong. Um, we've kind of mentioned it, but like back in the day, you had teams like Penn State, Florida State, I think Miami. Those teams were independent back in the day, but they were forced to join a conference because they weren't going to be able to sustain what they had without doing so. Notre Dame stayed independent, and they're still doing what they did back then. So that just,
Right.
it speaks volumes. It's powerful.
It is. And, this whole thing and like realignment, independence, like I think there's still going to be shakeups. Like the Pac-10's like trying to make its way back and like
Mhm.
open up again and have some teams playing in a conference. And I think it would be a good thing. Like, it, I, I think it was a great conference out there on the West Coast. You had like Pac-10 after dark, Pac-12 after dark. It just was cool. So I think it would bring a little bit of that old feel back into it. But yeah, man, we're independent, proud to be independent. There for a couple years, it was a little shaky. We didn't really know how it was going to go, but I think our independence, like Pete Bavacqua said, it's as strong as it's ever been. And I think the administration and the coach, everybody involved, they want to see it keep going, which I think is cool.
Yeah, and they're not saying that just to say it. We're not sugarcoating anything, and the numbers prove it. Again, back to the money that we made in this run, pocketed 20 mil instead of dispersing it in the 16 teams. You know, it's like
Yep.
teams that, Rutgers, they're making a profit just because other teams went on a decent run. But then you look at us again as an independent, and we're affiliated with almost every other power conference except the SEC. You know, basketball is ACC. We have 6 games a year. Is it 5 or 6 games a year? Football, hockey's in the Big Ten. You know, being independent, you're able to choose leeway with certain, powerhouses, and that's cool. It's cool to do that as an independent, because that again is added revenue. It's other sports are going in playing big time games. Well, that's making them money. And
Mhm.
it's just like football. Nobody really talks about, and this is another, we could make a whole nother episode on this, but the games that Notre Dame plays against other conferences per year. We're playing the team from the Big Ten usually, a couple now, with SEC being in there, and then teams from the SEC. You know, Now we're playing Boise State. There's a difference in level of competition that we're playing week in and week out, where other teams are playing the same years pretty much year in and year out. It
Yep.
does get switched up a little bit, and that's a big reason why I'm starting to enjoy college football again is because we're seeing bigger matchups. There's teams starting to schedule bigger games, which is
Right.
cool to see.
Yeah. 100%, dude. Yeah. I'm with you on that. Like these matchups we have coming up too. It's such a good part about being independent, dude. Like we've
Hmm.
already had so many good matchups in the past, but now we've got Florida coming up, Alabama coming up. We
Texas,
just scheduled another one with Texas. So, dude, you're right.
A&M,
It
Arkansas.
and yeah, A&M, Arkansas, Boise State, dude, we're all over the map. We
Yeah,
play
every year,
everybody.
every year.
Yes, Theos.
No one gives us credit for that. No one gives us credit for that.
Right.
Because at
Well,
the end of
dude,
the day, that's a lot of travel too. Every year we're
I've
traveling.
I've always said this as well. Playing in a conference, you play five, maybe four, five, or six of the same teams every single year.
Hmm.
For the Irish, up until recently, we didn't have that really at all. We play some Big Ten teams, pretty consistently. Once we got the ACC deal, we see ACC teams more consistently, and we will see the same ones, here and there. But really, the only ones that we play every single year were USC, Navy, Stanford. Like those three were the main three that pretty much every year was on the schedule.
Hmm.
Um, so I saw that as a disadvantage, like most years when we were playing different teams all the time. We didn't have a feel for all these new teams every year. So I think that's a good thing to bring up too when you talk about independence.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. And now with the ACC making changes, we're going to be playing, you know, two of the top three teams almost year in and year out, which is cool.
Hmm.
But kind of like this past year, people discredit Notre Dame's schedule because of how other teams were playing. It's like how is that against Notre Dame? We can't control how other teams are going to be. It's not our fault that they're not good. FSU had
Right.
one of the biggest downfalls in college football history. No one expected that, but that was our fault apparently. It's like how it's not our fault.
It's
It's
always
just a
our
topic
fault.
of discussion. Yeah,
It's always our fault when we're involved. But
yeah.
we're
Usually,
we're the ones that saved the COVID season, made that stuff happen. Like, dude,
yep.
you just get tired of it eventually. And like now that now that we've been winning some more in the recent years, it's just like everybody can just worry about themselves. If we want to be independent and we want to do our own thing and we're able to survive and thrive as well and do that, who cares? Like come play us then. You want to
That's
bicker and cry about it? Come play us.
that's
That's
what
all we
made
can say.
this season feel so good. Even though we didn't get the national championship, to make it there was one thing, but to prove that we can beat the SEC champs, the runner-ups in the Big Ten, those were program changing moments for us. We hadn't
Yep.
had those wins in 30 years, and
Yep.
it all comes back to the same thing. We stuck to our roots, we stuck to what we know. We remained independent throughout these past 4 or 5 years of college football changing so dramatically, and we just proved that we can still do it. Didn't
Yep.
win the game, but we can now build. It's just building blocks.
Yep.
So
Yep. So, dude,
Again,
It'll be interesting.
why not go independent? That's the question of the day. Why not go independent?
Well, it's
We know
simply because
we
they
know the
can't.
answer.
Yeah,
Yeah, we know the
they
answer.
they simply can't. And if they wanted to, and I think of the Florida State and Clemson thing. They just sued the ACC or
Yeah.
whatever. All that's been finalized, I think, in the over the past week.
Hmm.
There's a reason they're still in there. If you were that unhappy to the point where you sued, right? To uh they changed a bunch of like how the payouts were, and it's based on viewership and things like that. So I get it. If you're like carrying the conference, I get it. You feel like you deserve more of the pie, fine. But if it was that bad and you wanted to sue your conference and you also essentially threatened to exit it and find a way to exit it, but then you remained in there, I think that's very telling. I just think
Yeah.
it shows like you can't go out and do it on your own because you are reliant on that conference.
It's either that or join another conference, and
Or yeah,
it's
or join another one.
more
Yeah.
than likely join another conference. They're
And
like
if
you said,
if
there's
it
only maybe a couple other teams that were to go independent, but I don't even know if that would work, to be quite honest. I don't know how many teams that could actually sustain it
Yep.
without getting a major TV deal.
Yep. Well, and here's the thing too. Uh yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It is what it is at this point.
We
Like
basically proved why we don't need to join a conference, yet people still want us to. And those are just, haters, which every team
mhm.
has them, but there's people that grow up and are raised to hate Notre Dame. So, love them or hate them, we
You love them
understand
or
why
hate
we're
them.
independent, and we understand why we're able to sustain success being independent because we've seen it. It's we've proven it this year.
Yep. Yeah, we definitely proven it. We've proven it over the years. It's not even just this year, but the fact that
Yeah.
we've been able to sustain it this long, that's that's what it's about. Like it just shows
Mhm.
how special this place is, and it truly is a unique place, not only from a football perspective, but just from a business perspective. It's a very unique place. They they've got a lot of powerful and just good people around that university. So it's awesome to see. But yeah, dude, good episode tonight. I think this was a really good topic that you came up with. And dude, you know, we're looking for subs. You guys, if you're watching this,
Hit the
give us
sub,
some
man.
subs. I know it's the off season and things are a little slow, but comment on it. Like, let us know what your thoughts are on this thing and other videos that we put out. But give us likes, give us subscribes. It just helps with the algorithm. It'll help us grow. So if you're getting some value out of this Notre Dame talk, the Irish brothers here would love your support. So, dude, good episode, good idea for tonight's pod. And as always, Connor, we'll talk to you later. But go Irish.
Go Irish.